In the radio studios of America, the technicians, the entertainers, the commentators, the administrative personnel daily unite their efforts in the creation of programs to please and entertain a vast radio public. The wide variety of broadcasts include group discussions, political speeches, sports, drama, and comedy. These are the programs that America listens to. Many of the programs are provided by large companies called networks, whose offices are towering skyscrapers. In their employ are thousands of technicians, musicians, and artists. And with their elaborate facilities, their stations are joined together in networks that stretch from coast to coast, their giant towers straddling the country. But also serving the public are radio stations without networks. Typical is this small independent station in New York. Its power is only 5,000 watts compared to the 50,000 utilized by the big companies. Its studio is the top floor of a building on Broadway. Its radio audience is composed of listeners in only 5 states, as compared to the nationwide public reached by the large networks. Yet it serves its own audience profitably and well. On the air all day and most of the night, it broadcasts news every hour on the hour, with special attention to the city's own affairs. It reports hometown sports events. It interviews distinguished visitors, such as this famous radio commentator from Japan. These programs are produced live, but live programs use only 20% of the station's airtime. The other 80% is broadcast from records, because a recorded program is the easiest to present. It needs only a turntable and a record. Now, a radio station, like any other business, must show a profit. To do this and still be able to provide a certain amount of free airtime in the interests of the public, it must sell a major portion of its time to those who wish to advertise. When that happens, advertisers talk to the audience like this.
Here's really big television news. You're the first to hear all about all-new 1952 light-tested television. Where do you see it? In your own home, of course, on a sensational free home demonstration. Call Circle 6-2500. That's Circle 6-2500.
Usually, radio announcements merely recommend a product, but this station provides its clients with a special service. It advertises merchandise and then takes orders for it. The value of radio time to a sponsor is judged by the amount of goods it sells to the public. Responsible for the policy and operation of the station is its president and owner. He must conduct his business to warrant the trust placed in him by the government, which grants him free use of the airwaves. Awards for public service, improvement of race relations, and promoting the safety of children have made this station one of America's leading public service stations. For such campaigns, the president is directly responsible. One of the more important station activities is the educational department, directed by his wife. It's her job to maintain contact with groups interested in public welfare. Perhaps the key man is the station's general manager. He bears the responsibility for putting the president's policies into operation. He is in charge of operations, personnel, and all phases of broadcasting. Among his duties, he acts in an advisory capacity to the salesman. The program manager is responsible for contact with the community and evaluates public service needs. His first responsibility is to see that the station runs smoothly from 6 in the morning until midnight. He must keep a balance between music, news, religion, sports, and other program interests. To learn what the public likes, His assistants make frequent surveys of listener preferences, sometimes by personal interviews, otherwise by telephone. The results of these calls are tabulated, providing the program manager with a standard by which he can shape his policy. Sometimes he works out an idea with a salesman for a special client, for it must be remembered that advertising is the station's only source of income. It is the salesman who is given the task of creating ideas to sell the advertiser's product. New ideas mean new clients and more money to the station. When the idea has been approved by the general manager and the director of programs, it must then be prepared for the ear of the listener. To do this, the salesman seeks the help of the studio composer, because advertisers have learned that their messages are better received and remembered when they are accompanied by music. For this particular sales idea, the salesman needs background music for a 1-minute announcement, something catchy. So he places his problem in the hands of the composer. The first step is composition. When the composition has been worked out, it is rehearsed and played by a studio orchestra and recorded on a disc. If the prospective client likes the idea, he may agree to become a sponsor. This means he will buy time so that his announcement can be broadcast. Many a client has ideas of his own about advertising. He wants his product talked about to excessive length, but government regulations keep the commercial time of every program within limits. So the salesman makes his own recommendation, pointing out that a long talk bores listeners who then turn to other stations, and nobody wants that to happen. By working with its advertisers to help them win new customers, the station has attracted more than 100 clients who buy time each week to advertise their products. Furniture, flowers, clothing, books. Yes, it sells books to children through a popular program called the Young Book Reviewers. This program features informal discussions by boys and girls of important books. It's so popular that the United Nations has recommended it all over the world to students of social relations. Guided by an expert, it brings from 50 to 200 young people to the studio each week to meet visiting authors and discuss their work. On this program, frank opinions are expressed in response to their leaders' questioning.
Miss Bronick, you're a great writer of biographies. I'd like very much to know what one of our young book reviewers thinks about biographies. May I ask a question?
Please do.
Oh, good. Henri, do you enjoy reading biographies because they're true stories?
Yes, I do. I think the biographer has a great advantage over the author of fictitious characters in that he doesn't have to draw a definitive portrait. the reader can always delve into other historical contemporaries' criticisms of a character and see for himself more about this person. Every person has so many facets that only a great author with a very long volume would cover all of them. But in the case of a biography, the reader himself can do the extra search, so that in the case of a man like Disraeli, where many books have been written, the reader himself can go into the history, the criticisms of the man, and draw a more perfect picture for himself. In other words, he isn't limited to what the author...
An advertising announcement on a program such as Young Book Reviewers is ideal for a book dealer, for there is keen interest in a radio program that invites personal participation by the public. An advertiser does well who has his merchandise recommended on such a program. The radio station, which creates this kind of discussion, is serving the public by stimulating an interest in literature among young people. To broadcast special stories which happen outside the studio, the station has developed a small studio on wheels. This car, equipped with recorders, mics, and shortwave equipment, can go anywhere for an on-the-spot report. When the Security Council of the United Nations met in New York, radio faced the task of broadcasting its historic sessions. Few listeners had the time to devote to a meeting of 6 or 7 hours. This station therefore prepared a specially condensed version. Each day's session was recorded on tape. The tape was then edited down to a half-hour show. It was then re-recorded and finally broadcast at night when the largest audience could listen. The program became so popular that the station was requested to release it to the United Nations so that they could broadcast it themselves. The great American game of baseball is probably the most popular of the station's outside programs. It broadcasts all the home games of the New York Giants, thereby providing another source of income. For a nationally known cigarette manufacturer pays for the airtime during which his product is mentioned and recommended at suitable intervals. Thus, an event is made to yield a profit to the station. The program called The Man on the Street is another listener's favorite. An announcer takes his mic to a busy sidewalk at dusk and interviews passers-by. Questions of the day are discussed and opinions and attitudes freely expressed on issues of the moment. After nightfall, events of particular interest in the city's life are often broadcast. For example, the square dance in a public park. Sports exhibitions never fail to interest thousands who crowd the arena and more thousands who listen in on their radios. As the day comes to an end and the home-going crowd reads the big headlines on the news tape in Times Square, a newscaster is summing up world events for his radio audience. Big stories from all over the globe and local stories of community interest. So ends the busy day. Everyone from newscaster to the lonely night shift engineer to the station's president share in the task of bringing to the public the type of program it likes to hear. For a radio station, like a newspaper, is a medium of information, education, and entertainment, and must recognize its obligation to the public. In addition, the station must show a profit. It must attract advertising clients. Its job is to entertain and instruct, and to do so profitably under a free enterprise system. This is independent radio in a democracy.